And in South Africa, former President Jacob Zuma has suffered yet another setback at the courts, rejecting his attempt to restart Ramaphosa's private prosecution. A full bench unanimously dismissed Zuma's effort to contest the validity of a private prosecution of his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, with cause. Judge Labogang Modiba of the Gauteng High Court stated after a brief virtual session in which Zuma's attorney, Advocate Danny Mpofu, was absent that the decision of the bench would be uploaded later on Tuesday. On the eve of the ANC's elective conference, Ramaphosa had successfully resisted Zuma's attempt to bring a private prosecution against him for failing to begin an investigation into the previous president's corruption prosecutor, Billy Downer. The entire bench agreed with the president's claim that a private investigation was an abuse that was started for an ulterior purpose. Now, Elton Romeo Hart, a lawyer at Law Clinic, University of Johannesburg, joins me for more on this. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, the viewers up in the west of Africa.
All right, good afternoon. Another blow for Zuma's attempt on his private prosecution of on Ramaphosa. What is the significance of the High Court's decision, and why is the full bench always been knocked back? What are your thoughts on this?
No, indeed, for me, looking at the private prosecution that was instituted by the former president against the current president, in South Africa, we call what they call a nollie prosecute certificate. Now, that nollie prosecute certificate was not clearly stating that there was a case that was sort of half investigated and sort of possible pursuit against the current president. And the former president then used that certificate to try and actually privately prosecute the current president. Now, for me, that application of him to privately prosecute the current president was bad in law from the get-go. So for me, the prospects of him succeeding in any other court is not even that great. So what happened on Monday against Billy Downer and Karen Moon, and was a repeat today, but the one for the former president against the current president, that case is even less, it has less value or weight. So for me, the court just sort of have a thought that I already had in my mind that the former president won't succeed with this private prosecution against the current president from the get-go because of the circumstances surrounding the case and on the law that he's basing this application on, which is not good in law.
Now, what could be Zuma's strategy here? Because I am positive that he knew beforehand that his appeal will be thrown out.
No, for him, it's all about most probably, I normally use the word politicking. And this thing started on the eve of the 55th conference of the ANC. And that policy conference or the conference of the ANC works on this basis. If you are criminally charged, you cannot stand for a leadership position in the ANC. So if he was successful in his private prosecution of the current president, then it means the current president could not have stood for office again for a second term. And I think that was politicking playing out there, and now it's just about most probably trying to sort of have see it out and keep them busy, protract litigation, keep them busy in court so that they don't focus on the upcoming elections, because shortly next year in around about late April, beginning May 2024, we're having our presidential elections next year. And I think this can all be employed to actually distort the ANC from actually doing what they have to do in preparation of the for the elections, to try and keep them busy with litigation in court and not focusing on properly campaigning for the 2024 elections.
Now, what is the legal implication of all of this on Zuma and his legal team?
Now, in terms of our constitution, he's got a constitutional right that he can appeal against any judgment that is given against him. And obviously, the rulings in June and July, he appealed against them to the full bench of the High Court in Pietermaritzburg, as well as the High Court in Johannesburg, in Gauteng today, that actually where Judge Lebogang Modiba gave a ruling to say we will see the judgment later on safely and on court online or case lines. But essentially, he must exhaust his routes before now. I know the former president, how he's been litigating, he's now going to actually petition the Supreme Court of Appeal to say that these two courts don't want to, and I'm petitioning to you. So he's still going to go to them, and then he also still has the right to actually go to the Constitutional Court. So this might take us another year, year and a half for him to actually finalize this, and then the elections has passed, and maybe damages has been done to the reputation of the president as a person running for office, as well as the ANC as a party trying to actually gather votes. Because we also see now there was two or three new parties that was now just in this last 7-8 months that was created. So legally he has a right, but there might be ulterior motives as to why he's doing what he's doing.
Now let's talk about the implication of all of this on President Ramaphosa's political spectrum. I mean, we understand that the elections, are just maybe around the corner. Do you think this will create some sort of dent on his political, I call it, future?
Most probably it might have a dent on the numbers that the ANC will get. I still believe that the ANC will get the majority of the vote, but I don't think with all the shenanigans that's currently happening in courts around the ANC, around people moving out of the ANC, that they would get a 50% or more majority, but they might still get the majority of the votes. And obviously, you'd never know. Our two previous presidents, they were in the first term, they finished it. The second term, never finished it. It was Thabo Mbeki and the former president, Jacob Zuma, never finished their second term. And for me, looking at it now, I see the same thing playing out with President Ramaphosa, that he will also not see out his second term. Somewhere, maybe 2 years down the line, they will also just remove him as they removed our previous two presidents. And that's what I'm currently seeing with all this litigation that's happening, that there is division within the party, and that will end up in being played out in courts, and eventually it will play out in the different political factions that exist within the ANC.
I mean, there was a particular trend you pointed out. You said that the two previous presidents never finished their second term. Why do you think this particular trend always seems to come up at the second term of the presidents lately?
No, it's like our constitution is written. Our constitution doesn't allow for our president to run for a third term. Now, the people, the political allies, they know already he or she, whoever is the president, cannot run for a third term. So for them to support him further, there's no political need and will on their side, because they now need to look at who's the new incumbent and throw their weight behind that person, because they will get some benefits or a favorable position or favorable positions from the new incumbent, and the old incumbent becomes then redundant to them. And that's, from my perspective, why.
So are you saying
somewhere,
okay, are you saying it's more of a personal interest over what the law or the constitution says?
For me, it's played out. It's personal interest, because if you look at what's currently happening, it's never that they think about the constitution first and think about the citizens of the country first. It's about political longevity, to see who can last the longest in the political arena, because people would be jumping ship from one, and you can go and check the trends yourself. There was people that was aligned with the former president Thabo Mbeki. The moment they realized that he's losing power and sort of command in the ANC, they moved to support the former president Jacob Zuma. And at some stage, when he lost sort of the power and command in the ANC, they moved to actually align themselves with President Cyril Ramaphosa. And that's a trend that one can pick up if you look at it very closely. And the law can do nothing about it. That's how constitution is written, and that's just politics on a different level, where the law cannot even interfere and guide to say, listen, yeah, this is what you need to be doing. You can try and use the law, but when it comes to voting and aligning and building factions, there's nothing that the law can do.
So where's democracy in all of this?
No, obviously, and I always said, I believe when our electoral system changes, that's maybe the time that democracy might find another and a better spot. Yes, proportional representation was good for us when we changed over from the apartheid regime to the now democracy, or the so-called democracy that we have in South Africa. Now, people are not voting, because now our system is designed like that. The people vote for a party, and then the party delegates decides who's going to be the president. And it's not necessarily the masses of South Africa that decides who's the president. And for me, that's always the problem that you have with our current electoral system, that people can say we choose to have X for a president, but the party delegates who comes from branch level to PEC level to then NEC level then makes a decision as to who will be the next president of this country, because automatically if you are the president of the ruling party, you'll become the president of the country.
All right. Now, we understand that, of course, it's been the ANC for, this many years. Where's opposition to? Do we foresee a time where probably, aside the ANC, another political party could clinch the presidential seat?
I don't see any other political party to clinch the presidential seat on its own. Only if they work together and work together in tandem. But as we know, South African politics, there's no tandem in their vocabulary. They always... And now the other day they sort of talked about a multi-party charter where they want to actually work together. But now currently in Gauteng, they can't even work together to actually just keep a municipality together. So for me, it's still going to be a long time for the ANC to be ousted from power by a single opposition party. The only way they can do it is to actually have all these other smaller parties join forces and then decide who's going to be the president, and then the ANC must take. But other than that, it's not going to happen very soon.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.